live and got it.
People love an Alan, right?
Right. Welcome back to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld, here with my lovely co-host, Barbara Slane, who's really interested in what the hydrogen man has to say. And the hydrogen man, Greg, back with us today. So, Greg, Barbara just bought a machine
I bought the machine because I really trust Alan's discretion. He's not one to jump into products. You know, he's very discerning. And he did have a little bug that he got in Mexico, which I picked up when I watched you on that. Remember you said you seemed tired?
Yes, you picked up. And then the hydrogen really helped clear out my intestines.
And then intuitively, Greg, because I've been having health challenges, I said, this is it. I have to get them. It was just like a quick thing. And there's a lot of gizmos. I had a center. I bought so much stuff. So I've really been on that hiatus of anything, you know. So I bought the machine. It was very easy to hook up today. I was feeling very depleted today, and I had 3 glasses. And I feel
to start with.
And then I feel so much.
You do? Better. There you go. But
I really do. Like I was really depleted, Greg.
But what I think, why don't you hear Greg's story, then you ask your questions, or you want to just go into your
I've listened to your interview with Alan.
Right.
I want to hear a synopsis of your story. And then I have some questions, and then I want to ask if it would help issues that I have.
So sure. I mean, I'm happy to do it in any order you want. I mean, I've shared my story, and I'll just share real briefly.
Yeah,
basically. Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, so share your story. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought that's what you guys wanted to do. I don't have to share my story. I'm okay.
Because people might be watching who don't know you, because I'm always getting new audiences. So this is a live program, like the hydrogen. So just and then we'll go into.
To keep it really brief, I was not really into the health thing. And a lot of times when you're young, I'm actually always admire young people who really get into health, even though they're not sick. I'm always like in awe by that. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Because for me, it took literally hitting below rock bottom, below the lowest point I could have even imagined. And it reached a point where I was like, I just don't have a choice. Because see, with my personality, this is just because people don't know me. One, I'm an extremely big skeptic. So when people like, oh, this thing's amazing, I'm always like, oh boy, here we go again. How many products are out there, you know? And I've really tried to do the best protocol I can do. Yeah, go ahead.
I was a victim of a lot of that stuff. So I became a skeptic.
Yes, like I said, I am a big skeptic, and I need to see it either has to make sense. I like that if there's good data, and how much data, and where's the data coming from, and these type of things. There's so much discernment and work that I have to do, and I have done. And I've literally been able to create protocols that are actually very simple and not having a million products or a million supplements. You know, it's been very, very simple, but it took a long time. It didn't happen overnight. And probably the greatest thing that I discovered was hydrogen. And because even though I was trying to eat healthy, even though I was trying to make the cleanest water, even though I was doing certain things, it just wasn't enough. And hydrogen, yes.
Tell Barbara how sick you were, because you were very, very unwell.
Yes, and by the way, I hope you guys don't mind. I'm just going to inhale hydrogen. We're hanging out here, and it's good for me, so I'm just going to do it while we're hanging out. Hope you guys don't mind that.
Interesting. So my question just is, or do you feel you need it, or you're doing it just because it keeps a status quo of health?
Okay, let me put it this way, because a lot of people ask this question. Do you need water? Do you need all your vitamins, minerals, nutrients? Hydrogen, and do you need certain levels of oxygen and oxygenation? Hydrogen kind of falls under all that, but it's really at the fundamental core of good health, just like clean water and clean air. Hydrogen is right there. And so it's just one of those things. And I mean, your body produces it, by the way. So your body produces hydrogen. The problem is that as you age, and you're going to see a certain correlation, this is a scientific fact. Anybody out there can Google it if you don't believe me. And I'm really into facts and data. As you age, you make less and less stomach acid. Okay, this is just something that happens as you age. Same thing happens with hydrogen. As you're aging, you're making less and less of it. And it's a lot like your Go ahead.
I didn't know that our bodies make hydrogen.
Yes, scientific fact. Yes. Yeah, it's a very natural thing for the body. And obviously it was the Japanese who discovered that we do make it in our bodies and that we make less of it as we age. So it's really kind of like a nutrient in a lot of ways, but it does so much more than that. And it's just fundamental. Like as you age, another thing that happens as you age is that you're more dehydrated. So you're more chronically dehydrated also as you age. And this is something that hydrogen helps with a great deal also. It seems to hydrate better than just about anything there is.
That's really important.
So you would,
Because I just wanted to say that I did some research, and the three things that they keep saying over and over is it reduces inflammation, which is the root cause of so much, that it improves cellular, and it helps to relieve oxidative stress. That's a lot just in and of itself.
Yes. Yes. And
yeah, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. You say what you're going to say. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say also that they know that it functions as an antioxidant, but it's not a normal antioxidant. I wish I would have had the chart here because I have a video with it. But basically, one, it functions as a selective antioxidant. So this thing is selectively doing all sorts of stuff. It doesn't just do it indiscriminately the way that, let's say, vitamin C does it. So that's one thing. And it's very unique because it seems to do only good. I literally, it was a very weird intuitive thing that came up when I was first reading the data about hydrogen. I literally felt like this thing is like a guardian angel because it goes around in your body helping you out and protecting you. I mean, it's literally I didn't think about it. It came intuitively. And I just thought that's kind of a weird thought, but it functions like that. It's so amazing, so unique that honestly, no scientist to this date, they still don't know the full mechanism of how it works because it'll do different things for different people. You know, it's the craziest thing. So just an FYI for you guys.
Just tell Barbara and people listening for the first time, how sick were you? How debilitated before you started doing this?
Oh, I mean, I was literally, I don't even think I'd be alive already. I mean, I was so sick, I couldn't walk. I had inflammation all over my body. It hurt so bad. I could not lift the remote control and change the channels and even turn the TV on. I was in so much pain and everything just hurt so much. I also had a heart condition. So my heart was an absolute mess. I was told I should be dead by now, technically. I also had a lot of like autoimmune issues, hence the reason I was having inflammation everywhere and things were all out of whack. My immune system was absolute trash. I mean, I would get sick at a drop of a hat, and then I wouldn't be able to overcome it for at least a month or more. And then even if I did finally recover, I would literally get sick within a week again and the whole thing all over again for another month or two. It was like, oh my goodness, it was so frustrating. It took so much out of me psychologically and spiritually. I mean, it broke me. I totally broken. You know, I'm really a shy person, believe it or not. And I'm really kind of embarrassed to share some of this stuff, but I just think it's too important not to share it because people are out there are going through the same thing. And I can just tell you that it was absolutely terrible. And even to this day, and this is again embarrassing to say, but it's the truth, I'm still broken because of everything that I went through so much. It really affected me. So sometimes if I talk, like, you know, I'll try not to get too deep into the subject because if I start talking about it, the memories start coming up and I'll just start crying because it was such a painful.
A lot of health challenges, and I think it makes me empathize with people, and I'm so sorry to experience, but I think it led to what your mission or karma or whatever it is, as the hydrogen man. I feel I want to get you a cape.
Yeah, you know, I think that's the whole reason I speak about it so much is because although I'm really actually not a person who wants to be a public figure. I'm not really a person wanting to, do such things, but I knew that it's important. I did make a promise because I did pray about it before I ever discovered hydrogen. And so, yeah, so I'm sharing it with people. I've had countless people. I just had a woman today contacted me. She had macular degeneration. She has cataracts issues and some other eye issues where, she's kind of going blind. And she had such an amazing result from the hydrogen. Her eye doctor just couldn't believe it because her conditions are reversing. And he's like shocked because the best they can do in the medical establishment is put injections in her eye just to keep it from advancing. And let alone she's reversing it. And so they're just blown away. And she contacted me today and she was like, I just wanted to say thank you.
Things. Are you hooked up to something?
Yes.
And if you are, because the 2 interviews I've seen, is your machine running all the time that you could hook yourself up to the oxygen because it only goes on a 30 or 90-minute cycle?
Well, first of all, it's hydrogen, not oxygen.
Hydrogen, yeah.
And second of all, you're asking me if my machine is on all the time?
Like, in other words, you just put it on, but it's the hydrogen is active on the cannula when the machine is running. So
yes, you want me to show you?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can turn off, first of all, this background, because let's see, background effects.
Yeah, because
okay, here we go.
From 0 to 30 or 30 to 0, it's still working.
Okay, so
let's see here. So here's the machine.
All day, because you want to be able to breathe it in when you feel the desire to do so, right?
Yeah, well, whenever I have time, then I sit down and I just turn it on. And the moment you turn it on, you can breathe it.
Right. So you can breathe it and then.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
So what I was told is that as the oxygen's being made, that's the time
hydrogen.
You nebulize. The hydrogen, sorry.
The hydrogen, the moment you turn, okay, so for inhalation, notice I took out the hydrogen catcher, which is the white thing that's normally in here.
Right.
So I removed that. Then you put a different lid on. I have a different lid on for the inhalation. Then I hook up the cannula. The moment I turn it on, the gas begins to flow within about 3 seconds or 4 seconds. And now it's just constantly flowing now because it's been on it's at 22 minutes, which means it's been running since 30. So it's been running 8 minutes so far. And I'm inhaling right now.
What's the purpose of the hydrogen catcher when it's in the white thing? What does that do actually? White.
Okay,
floating.
So the purpose of the hydrogen catcher is when you're dissolving, hold on a second, I can't even. Let's just see if I can go back to where we were. Okay, so now I can see you guys. Okay, so the hydrogen catcher, one of the things that the Japanese do, and this is why they're so detailed, right? I love the way the Japanese do things, and they're the ones who created this device. They measure everything. So if you were to run 1.5 liters, which is a full pitcher, if you run it for 30 minutes and you measure the hydrogen, it will probably be around 1.3 ppm, which is parts per million. 1.6 ppm is full saturation in our atmospheric pressure, meaning you can't go beyond that really, unless it's under pressure, but it's stable if you make it like this. And you want it stable because you want it to be bioavailable to your body. So when you put the hydrogen catcher in there, or the hydrogen keeper, whatever name, I don't even know what the company calls it, but whatever, the hydrogen catcher, when you run it for 30 minutes and measure, instead of 1.3, it'll be at 1.6. So it helps dissolve the hydrogen gas into the water, and they've measured it, they know this, and that's why it's used.
So the catcher comes out when you nebulize, right? And
yes.
Feel the advantages are to nebulizing versus drinking. What's the difference?
Okay, so the difference is, okay, there's quite a few. They have similarities because hydrogen has similarities. But when you do the hydrogen water, this is actually something that's interesting, that surprised the scientists in Japan, because they weren't expecting this. I don't think anybody could have expected that the water was superior to the gas inhalation. Nobody would have guessed that because you get way more hydrogen when you inhale.
Wow.
So everybody would have thought, why in the world would the water, which has way less hydrogen in it, be superior? Well, there are weird things. I mean, it's just anomalies. To this day, we don't even know why. I actually think I know why, but no scientist, nobody in the world knows why it does what it does. And although I believe I know why and I can explain it, I just haven't because all my stuff gets stolen. People, though, all these hydrogen people watch my videos just to steal my information and take credit for it. So I don't do that anymore. But the hydrogen water, when you drink it, for example, the body will produce ghrelin. Okay. Your
What
body
will
will
it
produce ghrelin.
What is
What's
that?
ghrelin?
Okay, ghrelin is almost like a type of hormone that the body naturally produces, typically when you're fasting.
Oh,
Hmm.
And it's the precursor to HGH, which is
Right.
human growth hormone. Okay. There are many benefits to ghrelin. Now, when you inhale the hydrogen gas, you won't be making any ghrelin. Okay.
almost if it mimics fasting, what it's doing is it's really encouraging your body to go of toxins.
That's definitely part of it. And there's so much, by the way. I mean, this hydrogen rabbit hole goes so deep, it gets really pretty ridiculous.
So, okay, so I'm a beginner. I just have the machine. I told you today I was feeling very depleted on a mind, body, soul level. I just unusually so. I figured, well, this is really auspicious that it arrived today. I had 3 glasses and I do feel so much better. But for someone, and so just a quick history, 25 years ago, I went through chemotherapy. I'm fine, but my body took a hit. I went through mold, I mean, the fact that I feel as good as I do is itself a miracle, and lots of other things, but I've had and I could talk to you privately another time, and chronic stomach issue. You talked about the stomach and all that. So how much is too much for someone like me to start with? Because I would imagine each person's different, and there's going to be a detox that should be more comfortable to do, pertaining to the individual's makeup.
Okay. What I would say now, before I begin, I always like to say, look, I'm not giving any medical advice. I'm not making any medical claims. Please consult your physicians. I'm sure they know plenty about hydrogen. Actually, they probably don't know anything. But anyway, with that being said, first of all, if anybody is ever going to go through chemotherapy, radiation, any of these type of treatments, I highly, highly recommend to watch my video number 8. And the data that we appear to have some from Japan, super important. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That I was reading about that it actually mitigates a lot of the harmful effects of those protocols.
Yes, and I actually have a theory. This is one of my other theories. And if I say it publicly, I'll probably get stolen, but I'm probably just gonna tell you anyway. Because I have so much. I mean, I have books inside of me. So when you do, I was talking to an oncologist from Yale, because I get these doctors who contact me all the time with questions. And they usually want to use hydrogen for themselves and they want my input. And basically, and he's an oncologist, he obviously knows a lot about chemotherapy. Chemotherapy destroys certain T cells that are actually help fight cancer. Okay. There's no data at this time, but I feel pretty confident with this, that hydrogen protects those cells. So that way, while you're going through chemo, you're protecting the very cells in your body that fight cancer. So that's one of the reasons I've seen the craziest thing with hydrogen in cancer. There was a woman, I'll give you just one example of many. There was this woman who was deemed terminal. She had 6 months or less to live. She had breast cancer spread all over the place. She got on hydrogen, and I like people to get on hydrogen at least 2 weeks before any treatment. And I also use a lot of fasting. Even though hydrogen mimics a lot of fasting, fasting is a huge part of my protocols, okay? Especially what I call the hydrogen fast, a fast that the world's never seen. This is a whole next level that most people have never heard about, don't have a clue about. This is all my little.
Like, I mean, are there different fasting periods?
What I mean is fasting. So there's different ways of doing fasting. Periods of time, obviously, but that depends on weight. Also, your size. It also depends on how well you've loaded up on your nutrients, because you're going to get depleted of your nutrients when you're fasting, obviously. And then, of course, we bring in the hydrogen, and obviously the state of your kidneys is going to be a big deal when using hydrogen water. And sometimes you have to rely more on the hydrogen gas, things of this nature.
And wait, that's really, I just want to stop for 1 second, because I did read about the hyponatremia. So that seems to be the only potential side effect of the hydrogen. So how do you know if your kidneys are not able to deal with the hydrogen water?
Really what it is it has more to do with, like, let's say your doctor says, your kidneys are not doing so well, you can't drink more than 1 liter of water a day, right? So then we're going to set a limit to how much hydrogen water you could consume, which would be potentially different as to someone who would have healthy kidneys who could consume more of the water. And I have
What if you don't know if your kidneys are slightly compromised? A lot of people don't know that they have kidney issues until they go into renal failure. It's one of those post kind of, ailments. So how do you even ascertain that?
Well, you're not really going to know until you have it tested, obviously. I mean, you can't just guess. But what I can tell you is, that I have protocols. In fact, I put one of my brothers contacted me months ago, and I was shocked because most of my family doesn't want to talk to me about hydrogen and health. They're just like, like probably like a lot of other families. Though I will tell you what it did for my father. It totally changed his life. Because, well, I should just say real quick, he had blood pressure issues, cholesterol issues, glaucoma, arthritis, and borderline pre-diabetes. He was pre-diabetic. He didn't want to change anything about his lifestyle, though I do recommend it, but he didn't. And he got on clean water, hydrogen, and that was it. And 30-minute to 60-minute walks a day. That's the only thing he was willing to do. He was not going to let go of the wine, the chicken, the beef, the fried food, going out, all the garbage stuff. And all his stuff went away. All of the stuff I mentioned, the glaucoma, the arthritis, blood pressure, all of it, it's all gone.
Because of diabetes, I spoke to, and I want to ask you the question about the machine that you chose, which is the one I bought. Obviously, he actually said that there were people that had type 1 diabetes that started making insulin. And I was like, okay, that's amazing. What are your thoughts about
who said that?
who works at Holy Hydrogen?
Frank
Some
said
guy
that.
at Frank
Oh,
said
Frank.
that people would.
Frank, the guy who, Frank told you that, who works there at the customer service, Frank.
Oh, okay. What he probably meant, I mean, I don't really know. And remember, I'm not making any claims. I'm sure they're probably not if you spoke to them. But just so you guys know too, I don't know why. I have really strong internet, but when you guys speak, it takes a while for it to pick up your voice. So just so you guys know that when you first start speaking, your lips move, but there's no sound. And then about 2 seconds later, the sound starts coming through. I just thought I'd let you know.
So I'll think of Frank said, yes, Frank, yeah.
So what I'll do too, as we're speaking, I'll pause and we'll have time to interact back and forth. But what I'll say is that if somebody has a pancreas that is working, but at a very low level, like for example, it's only working at 10% or 20% or whatever. And I'm theorizing this, that is probable that the pancreas is healing to the point where it's starting to put out more insulin. So maybe that's what he meant because once the pancreas is dead, I don't think that hydrogen will revive it. Once it's dead, you need certain types of probably stem cells to bring it back to life, but hydrogen will help with that life. It's kind of like a plant. I'd had a video, and it was because of a testimonial of somebody whose plant was almost dead, and they were using hydrogen water on it, and it totally came back to life. It was really pretty remarkable, and they were shocked because this particular person has a real green thumb and knows what plants can and cannot do. But once a plant is totally dead, it's dead. I mean, you ain't bringing that plant back once it's truly dead. So there has to be a little bit of life. Go ahead.
Unless one is made from other areas we're not aware of, which was kind of what was being you know, intimate. I mean, that's suggested. I don't know. That's going out of, you know, my range of knowledge. But going back to the kidney. Okay. So you work with people on their profile, on their individual physical situations. But what is a detox for someone who's living in this world? There's a lot of environmental toxins. What is a healthy way to start with the water so you don't overdo it? If perhaps you might have a kidney issue you're not aware of.
Well, again, you know, when you're talking about kidney issues, I mean, if you don't know that you have them, I can't really tell you a magic formula to know exactly where your kidneys are at. I mean, this is just something you would have to have tested to know. All I can tell you is that if you have a kidney issue, well, like I said, I was telling you a story about one of my brothers, right, who contacted me. And he contacted me just totally out of the blue saying, hey, guess what? I went to the doctor and they told me that I'm literally at the very end of, you know, there's different stages of kidney failure. And he said, I'm probably 3 to 4 weeks away from being on dialysis. Like my kidneys are pretty much shot. And I mean, he didn't really know either. Like you're saying, he didn't really have an idea. I know that he doesn't eat real healthy, even though sometimes people are funny because they think they're eating healthy. And then when I really start observing their lifestyle, they're not eating healthy. People are like, oh, why are you pretty healthy? And it's like, this is not healthy. You don't know what you're doing. And that's okay. I'm not trying to attack people. But my brother's like, oh, I thought I was doing a good job. He wasn't doing a good job. So I put him on a protocol because he immediately was like, hey, I would like some help. Do you think we can save my kidneys? In my opinion, remember, I'm like, and I'm really straight up with people. Like I had one person ask me a couple of days ago, can I regrow my kidney with hydrogen? It's like, no, I'm not going to tell somebody they can regrow their kidney. You're not going to regrow a kidney. They're missing a kidney, you know? And so I just tell people the truth. And with my brother, of course, I was like, absolutely, we can get your kidneys back. Now, I'm not making a claim. I'm not giving you any medical advice, brother, but do you want to do this or not? And he was like, dude, I'm all in. I do not want to I don't want to be on dialysis. So he got the cleanest water machine. It's a machine on how to clean water that, of course, that I use. And that's the one I suggest. I only suggest stuff that I use. I'm not like one of these.
What's the cleanest? Is that something that you use as for the water for your hydrogen machine?
Absolutely, yes. Because I know every water filtration modality in existence. I know every way of filtering water. And in fact, here's a third-party lab testing of the one that I suggest. I could show you literally pages of chemicals that they tested to see if it would filter. I mean, pages and pages. It just goes on and on and on. There's so much.
Of the machine?
The machine is from a website called mypurewater.com. And if anybody wants a discount, because it does help, the coupon code is uprising144K. And I can even just
let's see that
144K, uprising 144K. I mean, I could just show you a quick glimpse. Now they offer more than one machine, but this is the one that I chose. And all their machines make the same quality of water. They just have different options. So it just depends. And I can put any kind of water in here, any kind of water, tap water, river water, doesn't matter. And then it goes through a process of carbon distillation. So it distills and has carbon filter both. And it takes about 3 to 6 hours, depending on the machine, to make about a gallon of water. So I'm going to run this thing at nighttime because what I do, you can probably see here, I have all my clean water in jugs here. I don't know if you guys can see them.
Yes.
So, you know, that's how I do my cleanest water. In fact, I have a clean jug right here too, filled with water. I got water everywhere. And so I'm really big on not just hydrogen, but clean water. Clean water is extremely important for health, and it's something that really helped me. So cleanest water, and then the cleanest hydrogen. One thing that people don't talk about enough is how clean is the hydrogen. Most of the hydrogen I have found out there, in my opinion, because I don't want to be making claims and fighting, all these companies get pissed at what I say, and I'm not trying to upset companies, but they don't like the truth. Sorry, I mean, that's what I'm trying to bring here. Most of the companies, I just don't like their hydrogen products because they're dirty. They use chemicals like lye, for example, sodium hydroxide, something that cartels use to dissolve human bodies to make hydrogen. It's so silly. It's absolute foolishness to do that. They use cheap metals. You don't want to use things like even stainless steel. You don't want to use stainless steel when making hydrogen. It's not the right metal. That's what a lot of companies use because it's cheap. And the majority of just about every hydrogen product out there is actually made in China or being built with Chinese parts, which is to me the same thing as making it in China. And the one that I like is handmade in Japan by trained professionals. They use a special metal that is actually patented. I can't really almost say that word. And also a metal that is made in Japan. I mean, these guys, people don't know that Japanese are literally experts when it comes to metal. I mean, just look at their samurai swords. Those swords would never be what they are without proper metal technology.
So the only potential, I just want to, issue could be if someone's kidneys are not functioning well, they might not be able to get rid of the hydrogen, whatever.
No, it's not so much because of the hydrogen. It's because of the water. Because kidneys, when they're not working properly, they can only handle so much water. Hydrogen's not an issue. So for my brother, back to my brother, who I put on a protocol, when people have kidney issues, we will use the maximum of water that we can that is allowed to not strain his kidneys. So if they're like, hey, you can do 1 liter a day, we're going to do 1 liter. We're going to do it on an empty stomach. We're going to do it, preferably before meals, but we're going to do a lot more hydrogen gas inhalation for people with kidney stuff. Okay, because the hydrogen's not what damages them. Now, granted, the purity, don't get me started on this, because the purity, I know a woman who got kidney failure from using hydrogen, but she got it from using a device that, again, uses chemicals and makes it wrong. And I felt terrible for her. Yeah, it ended up hospitalizing this poor woman. And so I cannot emphasize enough to people how important it is to make it cleanly and properly, because there's too much stuff out there. And the Chinese devices use very cheap metals that in a lot of times, depending on the device, can potentially, I'm just gonna say, potentially, in my opinion, be leaching metals into your
Why
water.
don't you machine you recommend in your code so people know how to get it?
Well, the machine I recommend is from a company called holyhydrogen.com. One thing that you'll notice about this company as compared to a lot of other hydrogen companies, they don't sell 1 million products. They don't have 20, 30, 50 hydrogen machines from China. They literally, what I like about this company is they only carry the best. And so they only offer this one machine because it's the best. And that's one really, really good thing, but it's the best machine ultimately. As far as a code, does Alan have a code?
Alan, right, Alan has a code. Well, I'll have to ask him what his code is.
Okay, people can use mine too, but I don't care. It doesn't matter to me whose code.
I forgot. So, would you put this on your skin, in your eyes, or is it just the drinking and the nebulizer?
There's numerous different ways to do hydrogen. Ideally, according to the data, drinking the water and inhaling the gas is pretty much the best ways that are the most realistic, because that's the whole reason. Another reason I love this device, because it literally makes the best hydrogen water there is. I don't know of any device out there that does it better. This is like light years ahead of everybody's water. The interesting thing about this device too is that it's also lab tested and certified, which no hydrogen machine in the entire hydrogen industry does. They're the only company in the world that does that. It's one of the reasons it's trusted by medical professionals in Japan. I've seen footage of medical clinics and doctors using this equipment. The other thing about this device is that it makes such high quality hydrogen gas for inhalation. It's literally bonkers. It exceeded all expectations. There's my machine. It just stops at 30 minutes. So I'm going to reset it so I can keep inhaling while we're just hanging out.
Don't you have to put more water in?
Not more water. So after the machine runs for either 30 minutes or it does have a 90-minute mode, it'll go into what's called standby, where it's putting out less hydrogen. So you just shut it off, turn it back on, and then it'll start flowing full force again.
But don't you have to pour water in? Like, what if Oh, I see. You haven't had the water. I got it. Took me,
Yeah, because
I need hydrogen.
the machine does have 2 chambers. So just to give you an example, let's just show everybody since maybe people are curious. So you have water in the pitcher. Clearly, I didn't have to add any water in the pitcher because I'm just inhaling the gas. The hydrogen is actually coming from underneath here, which is when you put water through here.
Right.
So you put water in here, which goes underneath the pitcher. So it has water underneath the tray. The Japanese did that literally for purity reasons, because this water that is full of hydrogen that you're either breathing or drinking is not being electrolyzed. It keeps higher purity. The purity was so high. There's things that I wish I could tell you, but I'm not allowed at this time because the company asked me not to say anything until they do an official release. All I'll say is that people are going to find out that this machine is the best in the world. There's going to be some new information coming out that basically proves it, but I've known it all along.
Greg, just on a topic that people can relate to. Everyone seems to have kind of stomach ailment, right? You mentioned that your stomach stops producing acid as you age. Is it possible with the hydrogen water to get back into a healthy working digestive system?
In my opinion, absolutely. My gut was an absolute wreck. And we know that almost 80% of our immune system's in our gut. We know that the microbiome is so important for just endless things. The Japanese are actually doing extremely amazing research when it comes to bacteria in the gut, the microbiome. What hydrogen does for the gut, unbelievable. I mean, just unbelievable. The free radicals in the gut, the inflammation in the gut, you want the good flora, the good, microbiome. It's so incredible. The things that I've seen also on a personal level. This is embarrassing, again, back to embarrassing stuff, but I mean, this is what we have to share. My bowel movements, my regularity, my gut is awesome. I mean, I literally have between 3 and sometimes even 4 really good, nice movements a day. Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous, but
Oh, jealous. So,
I have, and by the way, I'm going to do this just so we can interact. If I'm going to talk, I might go like this each time. So that way we can and you can do the same thing and I'll stop. So that way we don't try to talk over each other with the sound doesn't seem to be coming through real good. But I have a protocol for the gut. And if anybody ever wants to follow it, we can talk about it. Some people may not agree with my protocol. So I've had numerous people say, oh, I don't believe in that. I like to eat nothing but meat. I am on the carnivore diet. And it's like, okay, look, do whatever you think is best. I'm not going to argue with you, but I have a protocol and I've seen it work. I know it works. There's a ton of data. It's magical. And my brother, go ahead. Okay.
Yep.
And my brother, who I did put on my protocol, which I did have to eliminate a bunch of stuff out of his diet. He did follow my full protocol. His kidneys began to reverse and heal. He is not even close to dialysis anymore. His recovery was remarkable. His doctor was pretty blown away, like, whoa, because his doctor told him there is no reversing kidney disease. This is what they tell people. And he did reverse it a ton. The only problem, my brother, is he got all cocky because he's like, now he's feeling great. And he's like, I can't eat like this no more. So he went back to doing a lot of his regular stuff. And I was like, oh, brother.
So without going into your protocol, is it basically, it's a food elimination diet. Can I ask you what foods you feel need to be eliminated in order for the gut, for your protocol to work?
Okay, so it can be different for different people because some people just have certain problems with like gluten, for example, and it just kind of depends on the person. I can also give you one interesting example, which really blew me away. There was a woman, and I just thought it was so interesting because I always like these testimonials because they help me learn about what hydrogen can and cannot do. And even when there's no data out there, but I hear numerous people saying that hydrogen help with their sleep. By the way, there's no data about sleep. So many people, including my own mother with insomnia, Hydrogen is help with sleep. And I believe I know why. Again, even though no scientist in the world knows why, but it's pretty easy to explain. But the point is, there was this woman who had celiac disease. I believe she had it for over 3 decades. This poor woman said that if she would eat certain things, the pain would be so astronomical. She said it would be worse than having a baby. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty bad if you're having that level of pain. She got on the hydrogen protocol, followed some of the stuff that I suggest, because what if I suggest somebody to eat strawberries and they're like, hey, I'm allergic to strawberries? Well, then don't eat it then. You know, you don't have to follow my protocol to an absolute T. But there are things that I feel are just foundational that anybody would need, like clean water with hydrogen is just foundational. I don't think anybody can go wrong with that, in my opinion. And so this woman with celiac disease wrote me, I think she wrote me like 8 months ago. I made a video about it. She told me how not only did it change her life, because she said her celiac disease completely went away. She had tried everything, supplements, doctors, medical clinics, healers, whatever. Nothing worked. Hydrogen worked. And then she said she went crazy. She started eating pizza and pasta and all these types of foods. And she said she just went bonkers and she wasn't getting sick or having the pain. She said it was so unbelievable. And then she got off hydrogen because I think she was traveling for work and she didn't take it with her. And then I don't remember how many months went by, and it did come back. Her issue did come back. And then she went back on the protocols, because hydrogen is like, it's like anything. If you're taking vitamin D, for example, and you have good vitamin D levels, you're going to be in a better place. And if you stop taking it and you get depleted, all of a sudden, maybe you get sick a little easier or whatever.
So, so some conditions, for example, like your brother, does he have to stay on a hydrogen regime in order for his kidneys to maintain their healing? Or once they're healed, he doesn't have to stay? Like, do you need the hydrogen to keep the health that you've regained intact?
Okay, so let's see if I can answer this question in a way that everybody will understand. Let's say you're 300 pounds and you get on a healthy regimen, and let's say your healthy weight's 180. Let's say you're a tall guy, let's say you're 6'3", whatever. And you go back to 180. You're like, oh, okay, so do I still have to live healthy, or can I go back to Twinkies and ice cream? And well, you're going to end up right back at 300 pounds with all the issues all over again. So, and the same thing with nutrients. Like a lot of people aren't aware of this, but this is scientific fact again. We know that if you have certain deficiencies, it leads to disease. And you can literally turn disease off and on like a light switch, depending on if you have a deficiency and then you overcome the deficiency. And I'll give you one example, vitamin C. If you're deficient in vitamin C, it will lead to scurvy. You'll get scurvy. If you fix the deficiency, scurvy will go away. If you deplete yourself of vitamin C again, scurvy will come back. So does this answer your question?
It does, because the hydrogen maintains the homeostasis of the minerals and how your body functions. So it's kind of like the air we breathe, the water we drink, every protocol to maintain health and wellness. So what you're saying is, a lot of people's guts are messed up. They're constipated. They're not digesting their food. You feel, I mean, do you recommend people calling you, since you're so, really well versed in this, to get a protocol for their specific, situation, or can they just get the machine and start drinking the water?
Okay, we can go over a few things. Like I can go over kind of a basic hydrogen protocol, which can be modified a little bit, but we can go over a hydrogen protocol. I can go over a basic dietary protocol. Remember, you can modify these a little bit, okay? Which one should we start with? Hydrogen protocol?
Yeah.
Okay. So hydrogen protocol, in my opinion, would be like this. First, always please start with the right equipment. Don't use crap. People try to modify the protocol by getting the wrong equipment. I'm too scared to suggest anything out there because most of it's crap. Please don't use pills. Don't use Brown's gas devices, especially ones that use chemicals like lye, just none of that stuff. Let's say you have the right equipment and you have clean water. Now look, I know a lot of people have reverse osmosis water, carbon filtered water, and I'm not saying that water is no good because it does eliminate some things, but I like the cleanest water. Why? Let's go right into why. Because What people don't realize is that almost everybody's water in America is highly contaminated. Highly, highly. I'm not talking like a little bit, highly contaminated. We are dumping not thousands of tons, millions of tons into waterways of just waste. Okay. So when people drink water or cook their meal in something, those chemicals, along with whatever chemicals are in our food or whatever bad diet you're having, will cause that inflammation in the gut. This is why everybody's got gut issues, because it's in our water, everybody. I mean, there is literally towns in China. Boy, I hate to say this, but I don't think this is going to get us in trouble. Sorry, China, not to throw you under the bus here, but they literally had towns of people where everybody's getting cancer and they couldn't figure out why. What was it? The water. The water is so important, not so much because it will heal you as much as it's preventing from getting sick in the first place. And one of the nastiest chemicals that is in almost everybody's water in America. California's got a major problem with this stuff in their water. It is nasty. If you're in California, you better get a carbon distiller if you've got half a brain. No joke. New York, major problem. Florida, major problem. Texas, major problem. They have what's called PFAS. You know about PFAS?
We just heard about that. We just read about it, that yes.
I've been preaching about it for years. Well, here's one of them. And one of the many chemicals you can see right here, PFAS. See that?
Yeah.
Okay, now it's an abbreviation for some really long chemical name, which probably nobody can pronounce. But the point is, this carbon distiller eliminates it to 0.
Wow.
This removes all PFAS. Now, here's the thing. I should say no claims here. This is just a lab test. That's what it showed. But I already knew that, because here's the thing. Here's the problem with normal filters. And I'll tell you what's different about this than any other filtration modality there is. When a company takes a filter, let's say it's a reverse osmosis or whether it's a carbon filter, and they put it in whatever device, and you run water through it, and they run, 20, 30, 40, 50 gallons, and then they test the water. And it's like, ooh, look how great it looks, right? Every 100 gallons, that filter is getting dirtier. So the quality of the water is constantly going down. So they tell you something like, oh, this thing can filter out 10,000 gallons. Do you know what kind of quality of water you're at by the time it only does 500 gallons? It's continuously getting worse because filters get dirty, okay? That's just the way it is. When I researched water, and this is where my spiritual side comes out, which I usually stay away from this topic, but we're on Alan's show, so I'm gonna open up more on that.
Bring it on.
So when I learned my techniques, because I developed my own techniques for health, I didn't follow pretty much anybody. When it comes to water, I started thinking, well, how did, you could call it God, the creator, source, I don't know, whatever word you want to give it. How did he create planet Earth to clean water? Like, what did he do? Because I know that this much higher intelligence, I mean, I am literally less than a monkey. I am so not intelligent or wise compared to whoever created planet Earth, okay? I'm sorry to say, but I'm just trying to figure stuff out. Whoever created planet Earth creates things with certain intentions and functions. So how does planet Earth clean water? It all starts with hydrogen. The sun is made up of almost entirely hydrogen. It's pretty much all hydrogen. The sun hits the ocean, and when it hits the ocean and gets it hot, it begins to uprise or ascend. Ascension, there is a correlation between ascension and purity. So as the water ascends, which by the way, our spirits work a lot like water. As the water ascends, it leaves all impurities behind, okay? This is a scientific fact. I'm not making this stuff up. So I began to observe that. Then I found in ancient scriptures where they would say things like, pure as the driven snow, pure as white as snow. Well, guess what? Snow and rain is distilled water. That's what it is, okay? And through the process of distillation, I started doing research on that. That's what this is, by the way. It's what's called a carbon distiller. Why carbon? Well, I can explain that too. And let me grab that piece here. Because nature, when the water ascends in nature, it can ascend super high into the heavens or the sky or whatever you want to call it. In a machine, it can't do that. In a machine, it can only go so high. It's one of the reasons I really like the machine that I chose, because they tested them and they route the water a certain way to mimic ascension. Go ahead.
Alan's coming in, and I just, Greg hit upon an amazing spiritual explanation,
What?
which I really wanted Alan to
Yeah,
hear.
here, because we want to get into-
About the sun,
Yes,
and well, Greg can probably say it better, but and the water ascending without impurities, the spiritual dimension to the hydrogen. And I want you to explain to Alan, but I feel at this time in our evolution, Greg, the information that you're sharing, because there's going to be a lot more toxicity before the purity is finally achieved, that to empower ourselves with this knowledge is really knowledge, not just for the body, but the mind, body, soul, right? Because our bodies cannot, our soul can't be pure, which is why fasting is always
okay.
fasting is always referred to in the Bible.
But no, just
So no, you think I
no,
can't
go
see
ahead.
him.
Go ahead. Just keep speaking.
Oh, he
Go ahead.
sees?
Yes.
Oh, fasting is always referred to in the Bible. So everything you're saying to me is hitting a chord on so many levels. So just to go back to what Greg said was, and your viewers saw it, but that there is a real connection here to the purity of our beings connected to this hydrogen molecule and the hydrogen and the sun and the water.
What I got about hydrogen in our first show we did is that hydrogen is the first element. So it's directly connected to source. The whole universe is made from hydrogen. It's a manifestation from the immaterial into the material. So when we take that purity of that in, we're connecting back close
to source.
Yes.
But Greg, can you say what you said again about the ascension? I don't know if Alan had that. I love that.
So basically, the purification of water on planet Earth starts with hydrogen, because it starts with the sun. The sun hits the ocean. When the ocean gets hot, the water literally begins to ascend. This is the steam, okay? Because water has three forms, right? Pretty much. I mean, it's got solid, which is ice, liquid, we already know, and then a gaseous state. So it ascends. Through ascension, it purifies itself. It's called the hydrologic system in the world of science, okay? And so when it comes back down as either rain or snow, it is now pure. In the ancient scriptures, it literally says, pure as the driven snow, pure as white as snow, the purity of snow and rain. And snow and rain is distilled water. So the process that I put the water through, and there's third-party lab testing to prove it, that I was right. I mean, this is how I found all this stuff. And by the way, you might want to tell Alan the rule that we're doing about this whole thing where we talk, so he knows too, because when it's in a pickup.
You also, and then when you finish, we have to put our fingers up before we talk, but that there's a big thing about the PFOS chemicals. And by the way, Greg, you mentioned it, it is the majority at very high levels of all of the seafood that
Really?
horrible.
What is
meat and everything. So
what is that?
this is a whole thing that's coming out. There's a name for it, the PFOS.
PFOS is what does that stand for, Greg?
Okay. So the chemical is they call it PFOS because it's like polyphenol. I mean, it's like this super long chemical name that you probably can't even pronounce. And I can tell you a lot about it because I've deeply researched it if you want, but it's not the only chemical.
No, but this chemical they're finding, and it's carcinogenic in most of our food supply. And that's what Greg was saying, that his water machine, unlike others, mypurewater.com, and what's your code again?
Uprising.
Right, this is for his water machine.
For the water machine.
What your code?
Okay.
So for the mypurewater.com, the code is uprising 144K. They have like a really nice countertop system that's like 600 and something, and with the code it goes down to 500 and something. And they're really well built. They're made in America. They use higher grade of stainless steel. That's why I recommend them. You can get a Chinese one for maybe a few $100 less, but I prefer to get something high quality that will last way longer.
I agree. And then for the Holy Hydrogen Machine, everybody, please get your discount with Alan's code.
Right.
It's Alan code.
Yeah,
right?
ALANCODE. Actually, I'll put this in the chat as well.
I
Yes.
feel so grateful that through Alan's constant search, which I do also, but he beat me this time, Greg. I'm really I again have been struggling, and I'm telling you, thousands of dollars, famous doctors, detoxes. So I'm okay. If I didn't even do what I was doing, it would not be good because of the chemo and all of that, which I never would have done. That was 25 years ago. But I'm very grateful for this, and I know in my soul that this is 100% right. So what you were going to do was to go through a simple hydrogen protocol.
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, all right. So I mean, I was explaining, and I won't finish it, I guess, too much, but I was talking about the distillation process and how it does use carbon also. And it does that. It does that for a reason, because we can only mimic nature so much. And in a carbon distiller, the steam can't rise as high as it can outside, because outside it'll rise, I mean, thousands of feet into the sky. And so the machine will eliminate almost everything. That's why we have the lab test to show that it eliminates almost everything, but there's a few little things that get by that carbon can easily filter, like easy stuff. Like, for example, chlorine is a gas. So the chlorine could potentially get through. Carbon can easily filter the chlorine out. It's so easy. So the combination of distillation with carbon, that's why I call it a carbon distiller. And anyway, beyond that, we can get into a hydrogen protocol if you want. I just wanted to finish that thought about the water.
Thank you. And yeah, let's just tell our viewers. So again, you think about it, of all the bottled water you buy, never should buy, I mean, especially plastic bottled water, that's like drinking arsenic. But all the money we spend on not healthy, that the cost of this machine, with Alan's discount, why not do that? I mean, for yourselves, for your family, it's so empowering. So please share with us the hydrogen protocol.
All right. And so to actually touch on what you were just saying, because I have calculated this, buying bottled water, as you were talking about, is the most expensive way of getting clean water, and it's not even that clean. So that's kind of silly. When you get your own device, I calculated that one of these pays itself off in about 6 months. And then after that, you're just saving money, and you're getting the highest quality water you can get that you're cleaning, and when you clean it with the proper equipment, it's actually clean. God knows about the stuff where it's been in the stores and sitting in those plastic jugs. Every time I drink that water, it tastes like plastic to me. I have a sensitive palate. It tastes like plastic. So that's one thing. As far as the hydrogen machine is concerned, it actually falls in a very similar line. The initial cost upfront is the most expensive part, but to run the machine, thank goodness, is very, very cheap. I mean, literally pennies, and it'll work for years and years and years, and it makes both the water and the gas inhalation. And so it's another one of those things that this is actually the cheapest way of getting hydrogen also in the long term. And you have to understand that it's going to be long term, guys. Some people may not like this idea, but look, you're going to drink water for the rest of your life. At least I would hope so. I mean, you're going to drink water forever, and hydrogen's kind of the same thing. And so are my vitamin D supplement. I'm going to take my vitamin D forever. I mean, that's the way it's going to be. I'm also going to eat forever. I mean, I'm never going to just stop eating, so these are certain things in life that are just forever things. But as far as the protocol, now that, I kind of get that out of the way, my protocol, I'll tell you my protocol, and people can modify it. I'll just tell you what I do. Because obviously there's no claims. But the very first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is actually I'll literally go and grab a toothbrush. I don't use any toothpaste in the morning. So I grab a toothbrush, and then I have a little bottle. And let me tell you something about having a carbon distiller. There's so many uses for this water, and I'll share some of them with you. Like, for example, when you do a neti pot, there's a guy on the news who literally just died from using a neti pot because the bozo used tap water. And I believe it was filtered tap water. But the thing about filtration, this is what I love about this carbon distiller too. It eliminates all parasites, all viruses, all bacteria. No water filter can do that, okay?
He died from using a neti pot?
Yes, he ended up getting some type of parasite when you go right through your sinuses. And if you ever read the instructions of neti pots, it specifically says to use purified water. And purified water is distilled water, by the way, because you don't want to put anything up in your sinuses that is not at the highest purity. People don't understand this. It is so important. I can't emphasize it enough. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so, okay, you wake up and you don't brush your teeth. Oh, you do? What do you do?
All right. So back to my protocol. And I'm going to tell you all sorts of cool uses for the distilled water too, with the hydrogen. But we'll get into that in a second. So I grab a toothbrush and I created my own little bottle. I take a little distilled water, and you can make hydrogen water if you want, but either way. And then I put very clean essential oil. So I put like peppermint or something. And it's a little tiny spray bottle. You don't have to do this. This is what I do, because you can wet a toothbrush. You can brush your teeth real quick, just 20 seconds, whatever. I use a little spray bottle, few sprays just to kind of get that mint and just feel kind of fresh in the mouth in the morning because your mouth's dirty. Well, the reason that I do this, and when I don't just brush my teeth, I brush the inner surfaces of my mouth. So the inner lining of the cheeks, the roof of the mouth, and my tongue before I drink or eat anything. Why? Because the Japanese discovered that we literally grow cancer-causing bacteria in our mouth every night. And when we eat something or drink something, we are ingesting these bacteria on the regular. Okay, and this affects us. And I believe personally that there's more than just that. That's just one discovery. And so I always clean my mouth first before anything in the morning.
Whoa, so would you recommend that tongue thing, the tongue cleaning, or you just take the brush and you take the water, your water machine water, and you just take the toothbrush, gargle, and spit it out?
So what I do, I just use like tap water to wet my toothbrush and just shake it off. It's just a quick thing. Just brush real quick. It doesn't have to be complicated. 20 seconds. You just brush real quick, brush the inner surfaces, brush the tongue. I don't use a special tongue scraper. I just use the toothbrush, scrape the tongue, scrape the roof. Just do a real quick cleaning with a little peppermint spray bottle thing. Then the very first thing I do in the morning is I start drinking my hydrogen water. Very first thing, super important. This is my protocol, empty stomach. And I do personally 1 liter. So when I pour a glass though, and I have a really good sized glass, it's about 18 to 20 ounces. When I pour the glass, I will drink that glass in 3 minutes or less. Usually I drink it in less than 1 minute, because the hydrogen, here's another thing about the ascension. It is the ascension molecule, okay? It ascends so fast, it leaves the water quite quickly. So I just try to make sure to just drink it pretty fast. When the pitcher's on the machine, when it's already done filling up with hydrogen, it is in a standby mode where it maintains the hydrogen. So after I pour the glass, I put the pitcher right back on the machine, and it keeps the hydrogen at full blast. I walk around my room, drink the water, do a few things, go back. When I'm ready, I don't pour it until I'm really ready to drink. Pour it again. And I do that, and I finish 1 liter, because 1 liter is the perfect amount if you have really healthy kidneys. If everything's fine with you. If you have to limit your water, that's a whole other thing. Some people are like, I can't drink a liter of water. And it's like, well, look, if you can't drink a liter, the absolute minimum, in my opinion, is half a liter, which is only like this much water. I mean, it's not that much. Okay. So minimum half a liter, ideal number is 1 liter. So then people will be like, well, what about 3/4 of a liter? It's like, look, anything between there, guys. Okay. Anything between there that you feel you can drink, but 1 liter is really a good number. After I drink the water, I wait 20 to 30 minutes because my stomach's empty. So this is, again, understanding not just science, but really understanding the way that the body was created by our creator, by source, whatever, again, word you want to bestow upon it. If you observe the human body, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes for the water to go through the stomach if it's empty. So that's one of the reasons I like an empty stomach, because I want all that hydrogen going into my GI and doing all the magic that it does. Okay. And that's just part of it. After I drink the water, there's other things I usually do. Sometimes I'll do some stretching, but usually I go and start making what I call my hydrogen smoothie. I got numerous videos on my YouTube channel. They're all free. You can subscribe. It's free. I don't charge anything for any of my information. And then you can go ahead and see, I'm going to reset my machine again. Keep going. And then I start making my hydrogen smoothie. The science, here's another interesting fact. Again, I'm really into the facts. The human body really needs clearly a lot of water, but it also needs a lot of fiber. And I don't mean fiber in the sense where a lot of people will buy a supplement like psyllium husk and they'll put it in water and they'll mix and they'll drink it. The Japanese, again, and the Japanese are crazy about health for people who don't know, and they make such amazing discoveries that have changed our lives that most of us never think about. They also discovered that fiber from every fruit and vegetable is unique and absolutely special. And so it's really important, and so many different things that each one of these fibers do for the human body, including, it appears that that's how your microbiome helps make hydrogen also. Okay, fibers of fruits and vegetables. Now here's the thing. Here's the numbers, and I'll give you kind of vague numbers. Even America did studies on fiber and realized that the human body needs a lot of fiber. I mean, so much so that even when the Americans did these studies, they literally said, we can't even recommend this to people. This is too much. Nobody will ever consume this much fiber. Like, nobody can do it. So they picked the absolute most smallest number of fiber that we need. And they tell us that that is our recommended daily value. Okay, the absolute minimum. Well, check this out. Less than 3% of Americans meet that super small number. So almost nobody is getting enough fiber. There's no reason that people are constipated. People don't even understand the importance and the magic of fiber on the body. And I could tell you numerous things, but one is sweeps your colon like a broom going through and sweeping. Okay, you don't want things getting stuck in your colon. When things get stuck, think of like water or the wind. What happens when there's a bunch of pollution in the air and it's just sitting there? It's stagnant, it's dirty, but when the wind comes through, it really starts cleaning things up. Movement's actually something very spiritual. By the way, there's even ancient scriptural verses that talks about movement is life, just like a dead person, they're just laying there, and a little kid that's full of life, he's moving around and probably driving mom crazy, right? Okay, so movement is important, and fiber is not only important. Here's an interesting discovery that the Japanese also made, and this is why I created my hydrogens. The Japanese discovered that if you eat vegetables first thing in the morning before anything, now granted, I always do the water first. I created my own protocols, but I use this knowledge from these studies to create my protocols. If you consume vegetables first thing in the morning, which I remember thinking when I read the study, I thought, who eats vegetables for breakfast? Like, almost nobody does that. But they realized that it would help regulate blood glucose all day long. What? Even the Japanese were kind of shocked by this. They're like, wait a second, why in the world would vegetables help regulate blood glucose? Well, one of the beautiful things about these type of studies is that they end up uncovering things about the human body that we didn't know. So we end up having to rewrite the medical books. So this data is going to come out in the future. A lot of the stuff I find it 1 to 2 decades before any doctor ever hears about it. So that's why you probably won't hear about this stuff way later. I was one of the first guys to ever talk about hydrogen. I've known about this. I'm typically way ahead of the curve. So I created a hydrogen smoothie full of vegetables, a little bit of fruit, like blueberries, because berries are really good for you and stuff like this. Rich in fiber. I also add minerals because I know that our food is deficient in minerals. So I add minerals. The minerals work with the fiber. So I found data where it was kind of an accident, but they discovered that people were rebuilding bone and they couldn't figure out why. And it was the minerals combined with the fiber because it's like a time release. So your body gets really good absorption of its nutrients. In fact, I literally just got a phone call from a doctor weeks ago because I do blood work typically once a year to make sure that my methods are working. Because if they're not working, I'm not married to my ideas, all right? So if something's not working, I'm not going to be like, no, I believe that the carnivore diet's the best. I don't care what my blood work says. It's like, no. If my methods aren't working, I'm going to have to find another way. That's always been my motto. So I do blood work quite regularly. And I just did some, and the doctor called me, and I was a little shocked. I thought maybe there was something wrong, because in the medical field, usually they only call you when there's something wrong. And when there isn't, they tend not to call you. And what they called for was, they said, your blood work, and they had the blood work that I had done. They were telling me it's almost like too good to be true. And I was kind of like, okay, why are you calling? I was really confused. And the doctor literally was like, because actually I'd like to know what you're doing. We would like to apply it to our patients. And I was shocked. Never had a phone call quite like that. And of course, when I talk to them and tell them what I do, a lot of them are, some people are willing to do it. Some people are like, what? I have to eat vegetables? Go ahead.
When you say minerals, you need a liquid mineral supplement. Is there one that you?
Okay.
So if you watch my videos, you will see how I do it, because I've been doing a smoothie challenge. I go live almost every day because I make my smoothie every breakfast anyway. I mean, that's what I do. So all I do is turn on the camera and people can watch. When I'm making my smoothie, I add minerals, which, by the way, they eliminate the salt. They eliminate 99% of whatever the salt is, because salt hardens arteries, and we know that salt's not super good. It's the minerals that we're looking for. Little salt's okay, but they concentrate the minerals. And I add this to my smoothie to overcome the mineral deficiency in foods. I'm literally trying to create the best food there is, because the other thing I do is I add this powder. I've done a lot of research on this. The one that I recommend is from a website called ishoppurium.com. I don't know if you've ever heard of them or not.
Purium, yeah.
So, and then the product that I use is called the Power Shake. I like the apple berry flavor. And I've tried numerous stuff. I've seen the lab tests on this stuff. They test so good for glyphosate, like, 0 or just tiny amounts. And when you compare that to other organic products, I've seen very high levels of glyphosate in many organic products. So I really like this company. I only share what I use, and I've thoroughly researched. So I add these powders because the powders, I actually am using them as my multivitamin. I don't take a multivitamin, but I'm really big on overcoming nutritional deficiencies, because I know that this body was designed to have, the body is like, it's basically what the ancient scriptures call it. They call it the temple of God. The temple is like a house. And if you understand the blueprint of a house, you got concrete and beams and glass and, plumbing, you have all these things. Deficiencies is not having those parts. Like, oh, we're missing one of the structural beams. Oh, we're missing this, we're missing a shingle on the roof. And so I want to make sure that my body has everything that it needs. So I put those powders because the science shows us that the human body assimilates and basically really recognizes food more than some synthetic pill. And so I'm using something as food, and I put that with all the fruits and vegetables, with the minerals, and I basically feel like I've created the perfect food. That was my theory. Once having the blood work just confirmed it. Doctors are just blown away. They're like, you're literally like the only patient I've ever seen that has no deficiencies, because everybody's got deficiencies. Everybody's deficient in something. And this smoothie takes me 20 minutes every morning. That's not a lot to take 20 minutes in the morning, every morning, to make sure that you're getting the fiber that's going to move your bowels, anti-inflammatory, regulate blood glucose. You drink your hydrogen water before that, even more magic. I mean, this is how easy it is. Drink some clean hydrogen water in the morning. And
What vegetables do you use for your smoothie?
This is something that people can modify, but I put greens, and it changes, but I put different greens. I put the powder, obviously. Then I usually put something like, I put carrots. Carrots are just very inexpensive. You can get organic carrots, and everything's got to be organic, because one of the other issues is when you start getting pesticides and chemicals, these are also wreaking havoc on your GI and your stomach and causing inflammation and all the other stuff. So that's another reason I got to go organic, spend the extra money, sorry. And I'm supporting organic farmers who are going against the grain. So I love supporting organic farming. And so I'll put blueberries. I put chia seeds that are soaked in hydrogen water, which bringing a lot of water into the GI is also something that is crucially important for your health. Because if you eat something like, let's say you eat dried beef jerky, boy, is that a recipe for disaster. Because when you bring in food that is dry, it pulls water from your colon. So like I put walnuts, for example, in my smoothie. I put my walnuts in hydrogen water and put them in the fridge because in the morning, those nuts suck up all this water, some of the hydrogen, and I put those also in the smoothie. I also put celery in there. I also sometimes I'll put an apple. What else do I put in my smoothie? I mean, again, you can watch the video. Oh, I put beets in my smoothies also. I'm putting natto. Natto is probably one of the most important things right now. We can't talk about it if we're on YouTube because we don't have free speech anymore. So thanks for that, Mr. Brandon. But whatever the case is, natto is probably the #1 superfood in all of Japan. And the Japanese have done so many studies on food. Oh, go ahead. You wanted to say something?
Natto, N-A-T-O, right? Natto.
Natto. So two T's. And the reason that it's going to become very popular, and it already is because I've been talking about it and I go to the grocery store. Now the shelves are empty. I can't even get my own natto now. I have to be patient and I even buy the case. But it is a special fermented bean. But the Japanese have done so much research on natto, and it is remarkable for health. And it has a special enzyme in it called nattokinase. Some people like to call it nattokinase, whatever. But I put that in the smoothie also. It's rich in protein, vitamin K, blah, 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 so many things. So I create this smoothie basically. You can go watch the videos, see exactly how I do it. I add hydrogen to it, which is why it becomes a hydrogen smoothie. And some people are like, why would you put hydrogen in it? This is why I do it. I saw a study in Japan where they literally would take like any fruit or vegetable that you want, and they can measure the antioxidative power of that vegetable. For example, a carrot, okay? Now, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but they did studies on organic food versus non-organic food. And you'll have 2 carrots and they'll look identical. But when they test them, the organic carrot has way more antioxidants. Okay, so it's already a scientific fact. There is a difference, not just the pesticides, but even the nutritional aspect. And I believe more than even that we haven't even tested yet. Okay. But the point is, when they soak that carrot in hydrogen water for like 20 minutes and they take it out and test it again, the antioxidants are through the roof. It has enhanced the carrot. And so I just soak all my hydrogen because, by the way, I got plenty of hydrogen water. I got a machine now that makes all the water I want. Here, hold on. Someone's trying to call me and go ahead.
How many machines do you have?
I have 2.
Right, because you're running them all the time.
Well, I might be able to get away with 1. The reason that I got 2 finally, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made, is because one of them is just set up for inhalation all the time. So I can sit down right here and have my dinners. And one of my protocols is I inhale while I eat. So I have hydrogen gas while I'm eating. So that's another protocol that I do. And so
do you do that because it helps the food to assimilate in the highest way? Is that why you do it, or?
I'll tell you what my theory is. So we know that hydrogen protects you. And I say protects you, like if you watch my video number 8, when cells are exposed to like chemotherapy with or without hydrogen, you're going to see for yourself how much hydrogen protects you. And that's just one of many examples. I could give you an example on, I don't know, have you guys ever heard of a drug called cisplatin?
What? Cisplatin?
Okay.
Adriamycin, yeah. The chemo.
So cisplatin is a chemo drug. It's for tumors. And doctors are typically pretty hesitant about prescribing it because it destroys your kidneys. I mean, by the time you're done with cisplatin, you pretty much need a kidney transplant usually. So they're very hesitant. Well, there was a study where they used hydrogen while giving cisplatin, and it protected the kidneys. Again, remember I told you it's like a guardian angel. It protected the kidneys so much that you could literally take this drug and walk out with your original kidneys intact, which is very impressive. So think about this for a moment. This is how I think. This is the way my brain works. If it will protect me from something that is so damaging to the body, okay, well, let's say I'm eating a meal. And let's say in this meal, now, for a lot of people who haven't done this research, with every meal we eat, we age, okay? This is just some data for you. So if you've ever known anything about longevity, there's a correlation between longevity and the amount of calories you consume. So less caloric intake, but more nutrition, you're going to be healthier and live longer than somebody who's just eating a ton of food, just empty calories or whatever, or even just being okay. So if I'm eating a meal, and I also know that nobody's food is practically perfect these days. So is there going to be a little pesticides in there? Maybe. Even if it's organic, now the levels will be quite different, but there's going to be something in my food that might not be perfect for me. And there's also nutrients in my food that I want to absorb. So while I'm inhaling, it could potentially be protecting me from anything that might be off with it. Hydrogen, by the way, is anti-aging. I could tell you all about a very interesting study that the Japanese did and found this to be highly anti-aging. So it's protecting me. And also, hydrogen opens up something called ghost veins. So the way that I visualize the body, because I have a whole visualization of it now. This is how I've figured out a lot of the stuff that I've figured out. Blood is running through your body like a river, okay? The blood is the carrier. So the blood is carrying nutrients and it's bringing them to all your tissues. So it's almost like going by a construction site and these trucks are coming by and you're taking, support beams and plumbing and you're trying to build a structure. So the blood is carrying all this. Well, what hydrogen has done, this was discovered by the #1 university in the world that researches and uses hydrogen medically, and it's a Japanese university called Keio University. What they discovered is that hydrogen opens up something called ghost veins. Now, for a lot of people who don't know what ghost veins are, and you can research it, as we age, we literally have veins in our body where blood doesn't even go to anymore. They're like a ghost town. They're literally not getting any blood supply into certain parts of our body. Well, the hydrogen opens those pathways up again. And so it opens them up. And then we have all these nutrients in the blood, right? Because I make my hydrogen smoothie, which is basically my multivitamin in food form. And it's my sustenance. So, it fills me up. It does a lot of good things for me. So I'm inhaling the hydrogen. I sit down and inhale the hydrogen when I drink my smoothie, by the way, in the mornings. And I'm getting all these nutrients. And the way that it moves the blood. So video number 68 that I made is a footage from a lab in Japan. And they show how the hydrogen water moves the blood. It is unbelievable. I literally had a doctor call me. This doctor called me and said, what you're showing in that video is just impossible. You're lying to everybody. And I said, no, this is from a medical lab in Japan. And they're like, no, what you're showing there is impossible. And I said, no, I'm pretty sure it's real. They said, were you in the lab? And I said, no. And so they were implying that the Japanese were lying to me and being deceiving, which the Japanese, that's not a big thing that they do, by the way. They're very honorable people. So this doctor said, I am willing to buy the same exact machine that they use in the study, which is the one that I'm using, by the way. And I'm willing to take it to my own lab and do the exact same study. And if I prove that this is not true, will you share it with your audience? I said, absolutely, I will. Of course. I'm all about bringing the truth and trying to figure out how we heal the body. So she did this. She got back to me and she said, I can't believe it. The results were identical. So it was the real deal. She became a huge proponent of hydrogen. She actually gave it to her 90-something-year-old mother who could barely stand up and walk for 2 minutes. And her mother later on could stand up and walk around for 2 hours. And she told me the story about her mother literally saying, look, you bring a lot of stuff to me, because her daughter, who was a physician, was always bringing her some new thing that she discovered. And her mother never asked what it was. She would just take it and take the pill or whatever it was. But apparently her mother actually asked her this one time. She said, I never ask you what you bring me, but this stuff, this is the one. This is the one that's working. This is the one that I'm feeling the difference. But it's just water. What is it exactly? Because to me, it just looks like water. What are you bringing me? And her mother, of course, her daughter was saying, it's hydrogen, Mom. She's like, hydrogen? So people really feel the difference. And the older you are, the more you'll notice it. So that's one thing that I have observed. The younger you are, you don't notice it as much. The older you are, because your body's starving for it. Your body is starving for hydrogen because you've been making so much less of it. That's why I think you felt it so much. Go ahead.
Dr. Marcola came out with the whole thing about it, but it was in a pill. And I bought the pill. I never used it. Something just said, this is too weird. Sorry, Dr. Marcola. So this just makes sense. It just feels so organic, and you can smell the hydrogen. Like
Yeah.
when I made it has that smell, that almost kind
Is
of
it
an ozone
hydrogen
type
that you're
smell.
smelling when you open the top? Is that hydrogen or is it kind of a
You smell
mixture?
gas
Okay.
smell.
Mhm.
Okay, so let me tell you this. I have to be cautious when talking about the hydrogen pills. First thing I'll tell you is I highly don't recommend them. Highly. Mercola needs to learn the truth about this, but he might already know. He just maybe doesn't care. I don't know. The reason that I'm cautious about talking about it is because I did talk about another show, and they put their legal team on me. Let's put it that way. They went after me. But I did see the lab report of what's in those pills. Now, I'm not going to start talking about it because they'll probably get me in trouble again, and I don't want to fight with people. All I'll tell you is after a toxicologist looked at the pills, well, gosh, I shouldn't even say this. All I'll say is that what we saw in those pills, remember when you drink it, remember when they make it how the water turns gray and tastes like literally, yeah, if you ever,
Got it.
But the great thing I do want to say about hydrogen, and makes sense, oxidation is what ages things, right? Too
Right.
much oxygen. So what's water? Water is hydrogen mixing with that free oxygen and making it digestible. So if you just have oxygen, you need the hydrogen to pull the oxygen out of its toxic effect. And that's one of the, I think, the main things hydrogen does. It combines with the free radical oxygen. Does that make sense?
yes, and that is part of it. It is, that's part of it. And there's a very spiritual component to this, which we probably go into someday. But as far as those little tablets, one, you will never be able to inhale hydrogen gas from those things. And remember, hydrogen is odorless, colorless, and tasteless.
Smell that.
And
What's on the
And-
machine?
There's a little odor from the machine. It's very pleasant. It almost smells similar to like an ozone machine.
Yeah, it does smell like ozone. What is that?
because when the machine is extracting the hydrogen out of the water in one chamber, in order to dissolve it into the one that you're going to drink, it's off-gassing a little oxygen. That's what you're smelling.
That's what it is.
Off-gassing some oxygen.
You have.
And so just to finish the thought on the whole Mercola pill, and I'm not going to like bash it and say all this stuff, obviously I just say I would never drink it. That's all I'll say. But I have a video of a lab test of those pills, by the way, so people can go watch it. But what I can tell you is this: the pills in the lab test made the water all gray. Hydrogen is colorless. Then they tested the pH of the water before and after. It turned the water acidic. I don't know if you'll see that in my video. And hydrogen is actually pH neutral. So it shouldn't be changing it acidic. There's other things that are doing that. And then the last thing is it has an odor and a weird taste. It actually tastes like metal. And pure hydrogen shouldn't taste like that. So anyway, that's all I'll say about it. I'm not going to say anything else, whatever.
It was out called microhydrogen that Patrick Flanagan put out, and I could never take that either. It just
Okay, so I'll say this about Mr. Flanagan. Dr. Flanagan was on the right, he had the right idea. He really did have the right idea when the way he was thinking about it. He just implemented it wrong. And the Japanese, of course, discovered the right way through millions of dollars of research, by the way. I mean, it took millions of dollars and years and years and years of research and data. And that's actually what I was reading. And I followed the data, and the data, not only did it lead to this machine, I kept thinking, why is this machine so textbook? Like you look at the data, it's here and the machine's right here. Everything's identical. And eventually I found out by talking to the company is they said, well, this is why we developed this machine based on the latest scientific data. That's why it was perfect, and that's how I found it.
Pause and ask you how people can contact you as a health coach.
If people want to do if they want to do like a consult with me or something, they can email me at uprising144k@gmail.com. And I really
144K. There's a whole thing about why that is the name, but yes.
And basically, Uprising 144K is the name of my YouTube channel. It's usually the name of my discount code. It's also my email, just to make it easy. Everything's the same. And I do prefer for people to watch the videos because it's free and they can learn. That's the reason I put it out there, so I don't have to talk to a million people. But if people really, really want to do an individual consult, we can do that. But these days, it's hard for me to do it for free anymore because I'm so busy. But for people who really need it,
You shouldn't do it for free. Everything's an exchange, like gases. And so you should get, some kind of exchange for all the beautiful work that you're doing
Years
to
of
help
research, years.
I'm very, very grateful for this. I mean, I feel hopeful because again, I'm above the fray considering what I've been through, but I'm not getting past that hump of just something kind of, like you said in the beginning, pulling it down, like the system's just not able to ascend fully. And so I'm going to call you for a paid consult. I think you're a wealth of information. Very honored to be on this call with you. And I feel very, very hopeful. And having gone through chemo, my question is, do you think that the kidneys can be repaired if they're still functioning?
I believe that yes, they can. And the reason I believe it, and again, this is not a medical claim or medical advice. And all I can tell you is that I've seen them repair. And so I do believe that they can repair. And the process ultimately is give the body everything it needs as far as nutritionally, the building blocks. Eliminate anything that could be harming the body. Hence the reason we want the cleanest water. Hence the reason we want the cleanest food, because every single time you take in something toxic, it's like you try to take one step forward and it takes you two steps back. And so we need to clean everything. I'm really big on the purity. That's the reason that, for example, the powder I use is literally from a company called Purium because they're so big on purity. The water I suggest and use is from mypurewater.com. They're all about the purity. The hydrogen that I like is from holyhydrogen.com, and holy is to be pure. So everything I'm about is about purity. So go ahead.
Well, a couple questions. I wanted to ask you, do you travel with the machine? Obviously, you're not going anywhere without your machine.
It depends on how long I would be away. It is the good news is that it's easy to travel with because it's very small. It weighs under 6 pounds and it can be in a box that's about this big. I would never put it in a piece of luggage. Always carry it with you with no water in it, and never tell anyone that it's a hydrogen machine because the moment you say hydrogen, everybody's going to flip out and think it's explosive. Just say it's a water ionizer or water filter or whatever if they ask you. And as long as there's no water in it, there's no hydrogen in there because the hydrogen's in the water. And for people who may be concerned about it being explosive, like, hey, what if somebody lights a match? Because people are worried about hydrogen being explosive sometimes. The way that the Japanese made this, they made it a specific way for home use that would be safe. So when hydrogen is at 2% concentration, which is exactly what this is, it is non-flammable. I could literally hold a match. It's totally safe. And that doesn't go for all hydrogen machines. The Japanese did this because they knew that it would be safe and people could use it at home. And they did it that way for a reason. But it followed all the medical guidelines anyway. So it's safe, effective.
I just have to ask you this. What's your view on eating meat? I'm just curious. I've been thinking about this the whole time.
My opinion is, can you eat clean meat once in a while? Absolutely. But there's a couple things that you'd want to do. And I say once in a while because you don't want to have eggs and bacon for breakfast, a sausage McMuffin for lunch, and then a steak for dinner. It actually overwhelms the body. It's too much for it. The body can't break it down. And if you want to look at the science of things, I'm just going to be honest here, right? Because I'm all about data. I'm not being biased. Meat is dense in nutrition. That's a good thing. However, it's incomplete. It's got no fiber. It doesn't have really any phytonutrients. It's missing antioxidants. It doesn't really have enzymes that break itself down. And it really does lack purity. I mean, you throw a piece of meat out at the curb and it's going to be full of maggots and all sorts of stuff, within however many days. Plants are different. Plants have everything built into one. They have the fiber, they have the enzymes, they have the antioxidants, they have different phytonutrients, and they have even more than we're still uncovering. And most medicines are made from plants. They don't make medicine from meat. So
I agree totally. And I think because of the carbon footprint and all the chemicals and everything that goes into the meat now, I only eat fish, and I'm pulling back on the fish because of the PCOS that you brought up in the beginning of the program. And I was appalled to find out that it is in 80% of the fish we eat. For some reason, they didn't find a lot of it in salmon, but who knows? I don't know. So yeah, no, I thought, and can I also ask you, I know you have a spiritual belief, you don't have to share it, but I feel that a lot of your wisdom and what you were being led to is connected to that. So again, if it's personal and you don't want to share it,
Well,
it's
he wants
fine,
to
but
share this.
I'd like to hear.
And we can definitely get into that. Just a thought, because you were talking about fish, and I love fish. I love seafood. It is highly polluted these days. There was a study from UCLA as far as testing seafood. It shocked me. The level of contaminants in seafood is so bad these days that that's one of the reasons that I stay away from it for the most part. I'll probably have about a piece of fish this big about twice a year. So, and the other thing that you want to do if you are going to eat meat, because a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm going to do the keto diet and all this stuff, I'm just going to eat nothing but meat. They don't understand that eventually meat, if you eat too much of it, which is very easy to do, the body will change it to sugar. I don't know if you know that. So it's literally a scientific fact. So anybody can literally go and research that. But the point is, if you're going to eat meat, what I personally would do, because I don't eat meat for spiritual reasons, but I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if you want to have some. Always have a big amount of vegetables before you ever eat the meat. And the ratio should be big vegetables, smaller meat, not some giant steak with like an iceberg lettuce, crappy salad with a bunch of ranch dressing, these type of things. Those are just my opinions about that. And I do have a lot of other suggestions about food because it's part of my protocols and it's part of healing the kidneys and all that. And if you're trying to heal your kidneys, I would stay away from all seafood at this time. PFAS, which we were talking about earlier, which I didn't get to finish the thought. So a lot of people don't know this. In the world of toxicologists, one of the things that they try to do is they try to tell you things like, well, this level of this chemical is safe. This much chlorine or this much fluoride or whatever is deemed safe. These are the kind of things that they try to tell you in. I can wait, by the way, if you want to say.
No, he made me laugh.
No,
Yeah.
I was just saying, yes, of course, a little bit of toxin is never safe, no matter how little that toxin is. Yeah, that's right.
So a toxicologist was talking, they were actually talking about PFAS, and they were trying to say, well, you know what, this level is safe. And then more data would come out and they just couldn't say that. So then they lowered the amount. They said, okay, this amount's safe. And then more data came out and they couldn't do that. Eventually, and it's one of the few chemicals that falls into this category, eventually it reached the level where they said no level of PFAS is safe. It is that bad. They can't even tell you that the tiniest amount is safe because we know for a fact that it will cause cancer. And it's in almost, and I kid you not, almost every single person's water in the entire United States. So think about that. And some people be like, I don't want to pay $500 or whatever for a good water filter. It's like, okay, do you want to go through the torture of cancer? Do you want to have your kidneys removed or God knows what else, or be on dialysis for the rest of your life? And how much is that going to cost you?
It's also in our food though, Greg. I mean, yes, the water, yeah, but it's also in so much of our food, and that's what's concerning because we have the hydrogen water. Okay. We can drink it and hopefully kind of at least negate the effects of it in the food we eat, but it's in some vegetables also.
Yes, that is true. And this is why we do a couple things. Hydrogen appears to protect us, so we help with that. We try to get organic as much as we possibly can. I mean, we can only do the best we can. And then super clean water that is supercharged with hydrogen to help litigate the free radical damage from what these things cause, because they cause free radical damage. And make sure to have all our nutrients at full bore that we're not deficient in to fight off and keep our body as safe and as best as we can. And that's the best we can do. Is it going to be 100%? No. So some people may be like, oh, well, if it's not 100%, then I want to go back to eating Twinkies and cheeseburgers. Well, it's like, I play the numbers game. I'm going to do the best I can because I don't want to suffer is one of the, I've suffered enough. I mean, I don't even want to go down that road.
I think when you suffered, like we both have, you, want to only speak the truth. You don't have time to just promote things or talk about things that are meaningless and not true. So I'm so glad too that Alan turned me on to this, but also you want to take care of this vessel.
Yeah.
This is the only body we have that we get to live in, and it's to be honored. And so I think that what I'd like to wrap this up with, which I think would be really important, is yours, if you don't mind, your spiritual kind of viewpoint that kind of ties everything in that you're talking about.
I also want to say we're going to do a whole show about just your, do some here, but we'll do a whole show with just your whole vision about the uprising of that, your mission, really. His mission is not hydrogen. His mission was inspired by hydrogen, but it's much bigger than.
I'd like to hear your.
Right.
I'd like to hear your mission statement. Seriously, if I'm feeling it. I just would love to hear it.
You are feeling it. Yeah. That's so good.
What I can tell you is this: there are a lot of things that I went through when I was trying to heal and repair the body. I decided to take a route of purity. As I began to purify my blood, as I began to purify the body, I started having experiences that shocked me, experiences that I never thought that I would have. And those experiences led me to not just believe, but I just think this is a fact, but I realized that this body is, again, the temple of the spirit, if you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. And I really do believe, and this is a very vague term to say like, oh, love is the way. But what does love really mean? Love means every action. For example, when farmers grow the food, if they're doing it with care, if they're doing it with no chemicals, that's a form of love. If people are doing another work, like, for example, maybe making clothes, and they want to make them with no chemicals and natural cottons or whatever you do it with love and good intentions. And so to me, the way we treat the body is a reflection of our love, respect, admiration, gratitude for this vessel that we've been given. And some people may be like, oh no, I'm spiritual, but I eat nothing but Twinkies and cheeseburgers because it doesn't matter. And it's like, I don't believe that at all. I believe in the purity of the blood. I actually think personally that there is an evil entity, and I won't go into the details of it, that is literally polluting everything on purpose. They're polluting the water, they're polluting the air, they're polluting our food, even down to the clothes that touch our skin that is made of these weird stuff or whatever. They want to pollute everything, because when you pollute everything on earth, you pollute the body, because the body is connected to the earth. The ancient scripture says that the body was risen of the earth. We are connected to it. And when this body dies, to the earth it shall return. So there is a connection between the flesh and the earth. Now the spirit is a whole other thing, because the spirit is connected to the heavens and source. And so we have this duality of flesh and spirit. As you pollute this body and you pollute the blood, which pollutes the tissues, which pollutes your mind, the way you feel, you're disconnected in the end. And when you do that, it's easier to manipulate people. It's easier to convince them of things, because when people say things like, you know what, why didn't we come with an owner's manual? Doesn't the human body come with an owner's manual? It does come with an owner's manual. It's all intuitive. It's already built in, but you can't feel it. You don't even know how to guide it anymore, because we're so polluted. And we're not connected to source the way that we once were, or the way that we could be. And that's an agenda. It's planned this way. It's done like this on purpose. It's by design. And they've done a brilliant job at it. Too bad that they didn't want to go the opposite direction and make things so pure and wonderful so that people could really be connected to source. And we don't need, a million different belief systems. It would be so easy for us to know.
Say they. Is it more of a energetic, or without getting into a whole thing, is it just the dark versus light to simplify it?
Yeah, you can just call it the dark versus the light. We really could go into the deeper aspects of it, and there is so much to go over. My job, at least for me, and I'm sharing it with people, I've had to figure out how to litigate and guide myself through this polluted environment of just garbage to find, how do I purify my water? How do I help keep my body strong with hydrogen? Like, I've had to figure out the best way to do the best that I can in this very crazy environment to continue to stay strong so that we can get through it, because not everybody's going to make it through.
So I'm going to throw a curveball at you. There's the EMFs. Your Bluetooth is in your ear. What's your feeling about that?
I do understand EMF. And here's the thing. I tend to go after the big stuff because I used to go after every little thing, trying to make my life perfect. It became very stressful, very time consuming, and expensive. And so I realized this is not realistic. I can't spend every waking moment worrying about every little thing. So I went after the big stuff. Water is the big stuff. The air you breathe is the big stuff. The food you eat is the big stuff. And by the way, hydrogen appears to protect against EMF. So I'm inhaling it while I got this thing in my ear.
That's what I was getting at. So are there any air purifying machines that you recommend, or that's not part of the protocol?
It is part of the protocol, but it depends on many factors. So there are many different types of air filters. I do have some. There's one that's like super medical grade, like almost for like a clean room that I have. But it's very difficult because I don't really own a home. I own very little, actually. This is just my own journey. I have a hard time owning things. I don't know why, I just don't like it. And I have places that I'm going to be going to, and I can't be dragging all this stuff around with me. So I'm trying to live as simple as I can. And I'm going to be going to different places where, you try to go where the air is clean. But if you don't have clean air, you try to get a good air filtration system or whatever. And again, you do the best you can. It's never going to be perfect. But I know that most houses, just so people know, especially in red areas, most houses have mold in them. And there's a bunch of dust, and the ductwork is blowing dust everywhere.
That mold is the new thing. People are getting very sick from mold. Does hydrogen help to eliminate? It does, especially if you are breathing it.
Yeah, basically. So I did find some research about, again, it appears to help protect from almost everything. I mean, that's why I'm saying it's.
Sorry. But if you have mold in your body, mycotoxins, will it help to eliminate them over time?
It appears, based on some data, that it helps like litigate the damage that it causes. For example, like the free radical damage. Yeah, you want to move it out. And, one of the things that's really good for mold is actually activated charcoal. So that's a really good modality. I personally think, again, fiber helps move so much out of the body. Like people who are into, like, some people are like, "Ooh, heavy metals. I'm going to go buy this special powder to take for heavy metals." It's funny because then I see lab tests of those powders and they have heavy metals in them. And there's so many products like this that I just don't believe in. And so the fiber itself helps remove a lot of these heavy metals. And hydrogen, movement is what's important. You want the water in, water out, water in, water out, clean water. Hydrogen is just going to make it that much better. And then, of course, all the fiber also moving things out. And then, of course, walking or exercise. Please go ahead.
Basically, but what, from my reading, and again, it was just very basic, that by helping the cellular function and reducing the inflammation, is it safe to say that the hydrogen and the fiber protocol, if there are parasites, if there's mold, if there's an imbalance of bacteria, that it can be either eliminated or be returned to some kind of homeostasis?
I think, in my opinion, some of the stuff that you're saying is actually correct. But some of it, for example, this is interesting about parasites. I do have an anti-parasitic protocol that I invented. The only problem is, well, one, we can't talk about it here because we don't have free speech. And there's certain things that I've been using way before this whole pandemic thing started. And those videos ended up getting, literally, I made videos years ago that predicted the future, if you want to call it that, because there's this other channel that has me on because they think I'm a prophet, but I'm not saying I am, okay? They think I am, because I prophesy some stuff. But I just think I'm always ahead of the curve for some reason. I don't know why, but whatever. I'm not a prophet, I don't think. But the point is that I have a specific protocol for anti-parasitics that I've created. But the interesting thing about hydrogen is I found a study. See, hydrogen is not an oxidant. Usually oxidants are what kill parasites, like ozone and things that are an oxidant, like, well, actually, I won't name some of the stuff because you're not supposed to on YouTube. The point is that hydrogen, I found a study. This was actually for the liver. I've seen people with fatty liver disease. I've seen people with cirrhosis of the liver use hydrogen in their numbers. It's really good. Let's just put it that way for the liver. So remarkable. But I will say, well, I shouldn't say, I was going to say something about the Mercola pills that I've seen that was not good. But anyway, I won't go into that because it's supposed to be hydrogen. But anyway, the point is that hydrogen, when I was looking at what it could do for the liver, which was remarkable, by the way, then I saw that it was bringing down the parasite numbers in the liver. And I thought, well, that's weird. Why would hydrogen reduce the amount of parasitic load on the body, which is really important, by the way? And what people don't realize is that my whole lifestyle is highly, highly anti-parasitic. Almost every food I eat is anti-parasitic. If you do the research, if you look at my smoothie and you research the things I'm putting in it, you're going to find that almost every single one is anti-parasitic. Then hydrogen appears to also be good against parasites. Why? Nobody knows. My opinion is that it's creating an environment. See, parasites are part of creation and they just follow a certain, their job. And if you create an environment where they're not really need to be there, they leave. And so we lower the parasite numbers rather than killing them. We're just making them want to leave. And then, of course, there's other ways to litigate that. But a lot of people don't know. I'll share this very briefly. The Japanese made a huge discovery. They're going to win probably not one, but probably 3 Nobel Prizes for this. They did discover officially a huge correlation between parasites and cancer. And what they discovered, I made a video about it years ago, and still doctors don't know about it. I had a doctor making fun of me about it one time, and I didn't take too kindly of it that time because I get tired of it. People treat me like I don't know what I'm talking about. So I said, I literally made him, I'm like, he had a computer there. I said, you're going to Google this right now and you're going to read it right now because I don't like you treating me like this, like I'm just some idiot. And he did it. He read about it for about 5-10 minutes while I sat there, and he just turned around and looked at me and said, how did you know about this? And I was like, the question is not how I know about it. The question is, why don't you know about it? You're a doctor. You're supposed to know these things, but this is, and I'm up to date on this latest data. And most of the stuff's coming out of Japan. The Japanese are doing incredible things. And this new technology, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
This new technology is already being utilized and is going to be more in the future. They are able to detect cancer at the earliest stages ever imagined that we're not even close right now to being able to detect with $99 urine sample. That's how easy it is with this new technology. It's going to be so cheap, non-invasive. You're going to catch the stuff super early so you can nip it in the bud and it doesn't get all crazy and out of control, kind of like rust on a car.
They have a test now that's $1,000 here, the Grail test that picks it up supposedly at an early level. But it makes sense. If you have an acidic environment, a low oxygen environment, an environment and you're stressed, and there's already, all these toxins coming in, you're more of a candidate for viruses because viruses are linked to cancer too, and parasites. So the whole thing is just this poo-poo petri dish of a mess, of a big mess. And it seems like from what I'm picking up is that the hydrogen is just something that kind of comes in and just sweeps through the system to revitalize it and to clear it out. And I just hope it's as good as I feel it's going to be. But I already had a pretty good effect today. And I'd love to talk to you more also, Greg, wait, but we didn't go back to your, okay, is it just, are we leaving it as Star Wars, the light and the dark and?
Well, it's so deep, and I could say from what you said, you've been put on this planet for a specific awakening for people, and part of it's the nutrition, and part of it's
at this time,
the bigger vision that you have of what's possible. But you have to start with the body.
Right, because the body of, and so I think that this is the time where people have to be empowered for their own health, for their own wisdom, and really step into that. And what makes me a little sad is that, a lot of people can't afford this machine, even though it's pennies, because a lot of people are not buying bottled water. They can't afford that either. So ultimately, it would be really wonderful to find a way that everybody can have access to health and wellness, which seems to be somewhat kind of relegated now to people that have, the means. It's not very balanced.
Well, we're working that, but why don't we do another show where we go deeper into your mission? Because actually somebody in the chat said, I thought Greg was going to talk about his spiritual.
Well, let's hear a little bit.
No, well,
just a 5 minutes.
Okay, but we could do a whole show about that.
Okay.
Was that good? Is that better? Because you just can't go 5 minutes, this whole life mission.
A good night, kind of a spiritual message from Greg.
All right, that's fair.
Well, all I can say, I will say that I agree with Alan that it would end up being a very long show because there is a lot to cover. I think that there are different levels when it comes to spirituality, okay? As far as where people are at. Everybody's at a different level. And I'll even give you one really excellent example. Let's talk about a guy, and there's a lot of wonderful spiritual people who have come and gone throughout the ages. There's one guy that everybody knows quite well by the name of Jesus, right? Yeshua, And one of the interesting things about Jesus, and by the way, I love the guy, and I have all sorts of messages that I won't go into detail right now, but there's so much that has been given to me from the other side. I am very grateful for all this stuff, things that no human could probably teach me. But when he came to teach people, he was, if you really, really notice closely, he was actually teaching things that were so basic. He wasn't teaching highly spiritual stuff because he knew people wouldn't get it. I'll give you an example. There was this one verse. It's really fun. They're really funny, actually. He was trying to teach the people, and you got to remember what kind of people he's working with here. And he's trying to teach them all these things. And there's like these high priests or something, and they say something along the lines of, Mr. Jesus, I'm going to put it in New English, right? Mr. Jesus, you're teaching all this stuff. It gets really quite complex. Can you just summarize it all in just one sentence? Because you're talking to a bunch of people who maybe are not super educated and we don't totally understand. Can you just simplify it for us? And what did he say? He said, love one another as I have loved you. Now he didn't say, guys, just make sure to go to church and give 10% of your money to them. He didn't say that, right? He didn't even say, you know what, guys, and I know this might upset a few people, and I don't mean to upset people, but this is the truth, okay? He didn't say, you know what, guys, the most important thing, because remember, they said, can you just tell us what the most important thing is and put it in one sentence? He didn't say, you know what, guys, I'm going to die for all your sins. I'm going to take care of everything. You don't have to worry about anything. Just believe in me and go to church and give them 10%. But he didn't say that. He said, love one another as I have loved you. He was telling us that is the most important thing. Now, if you look at the world's problems, that's fundamental because everybody's hurting each other practically these days, okay? And it goes so much deeper than this. And I say this because I've seen it. It's not because someone taught me. I didn't read it in a book. This was shown to me, okay? When I go and travel these other realms. And a lot of people who don't understand these other realms either. Jesus spoke of them too. People just didn't realize it. When he would speak to someone he had this really beautiful conversation with Nicodemus. And he was trying to explain something to Nicodemus. Nicodemus didn't really understand. And Jesus basically said, and I'm kind of quoting scripture here. He said, if you don't believe me of the things that I tell you of this world, meaning the world of the flesh, this terrestrial world, he goes, how are you to believe me when I tell you things of the other world? And so he's implying immediately that there's this whole other world, but he never really taught about it because humans weren't ready for it. He was trying to tell people, hey, don't steal from each other, don't kill each other, don't do these basic basic things. His spiritual teachings could have been put on one piece of paper.
And why, as souls, are we kind of in this very primitive hospital realm, this realm of so much pain and suffering? For what? That so we evolve, so we see who we really are, so we claim ourselves. Why? Why are we part of this? It's beautiful and there's love, but there's so much pain.
Okay, there is a process and a reason for this process. Remember something first. We may be here suffering, we may be hurting here, but it's not forever, okay? It's not forever. We are eternal beings. Our spirit, so a lot of people don't understand that when you talk about source, you know, like the scriptures say things like you were made in God's image. And people immediately think their body, oh, so he has arms and fingers and all this. No. The image of your spirit. Your spirit is made in the image of God, not this flesh body. Your spirit is what's made in his image, okay? And your spirit's eternal. So by coming here and going through what you're going through, it's actually going to expose a lot to yourself for self-growth. So for example, when you live your life, and I know this because, again, I've been to the other side. We'll talk about that probably some other time. But when you go to the other side and you leave your flesh behind, everything really changes. Because when you're in the body, remember that your body's a needy little thing. It needs warmth, it needs love, it needs water, it needs food, you know, it needs shelter, whatever. It just needs so much. It really is a needy little thing. When you leave the body behind and you separate yourself and you're in the form of your spirit, everything becomes so clear. And then you look back and you're like, oh, why did I do this? Why did I do that? Oh my gosh, you know, and you feel the guilt or all these different things, and everything becomes more clear. But while we're in the body, it's an opportunity for growth, an opportunity that you may not have if you weren't going through all this. Because if you're in perfect spirit form, sometimes you don't have the opportunity to go through these different things or different actions that you would have never taken, that can't make you rise up, uprising, like the name of my channel, you know. And we're growing, we're going through these processes. And ultimately, I mean, the two big, most powerful things, and Jesus spoke of them again, they're literally in the number one prayer in all of Scripture: forgiveness and repentance. These are a huge part of our growth. There's an interesting verse where Jesus said, I will not return to you until you've learned to cry. You know, and when you truly repent for the things that you've done and want to change and be better, but there's a growth there. You're going from being a child to being an adult. There's a change, there's a transformation. And I think that it's a deeper transformation that people don't necessarily understand. So we're just like kids that are suffering, like, why does this have to happen? But it's like, at some point, you will realize why we're going through it. And there's one more thing. Oh, go ahead.
No. So it's really a collective rise in consciousness to, if we're all going through these experiences, it's an evolution of, but go ahead and say that last thing that you were saying, sorry.
What I was also going to say was there's another interesting scriptural verse that I'll put in modern English where Jesus is telling his disciples or whatnot, or the apostles, that what's going to be coming in the future. Excuse me. And he's telling them what's going to come in the future, and they start freaking out. They're like, oh my gosh, like they start getting scared. And Jesus said, because he sees that they're, you know, freaking out, and he basically says, hey guys, don't freak out, for these things must come to pass before the marking of my return. So he's letting us know these things have to happen, guys. So instead of freaking out about everything and like, oh my God, they're trying to kill us, and oh my God, the world's so terrible, and I'm just suffering, you know, instead of really running into that, what I've tried to do is I've tried to just work on me, you know, because there's a famous quote from Rumi. I did see it in a meditation way before I ever read Rumi. I saw it years after that, and it really surprised me, but it goes like this. It's really simple. When I was young and dumb, I wanted to change the world. When I became older and wiser, I realized it is myself that I must change. And this puts self-responsibility. Why do you think I put so much effort into me? And not because I'm being an egotistical, arrogant guy. It's like, no, I'm trying to be the best I can be. So that is shared with others in the world, because the way that the world works, and by the way, this is how sin works. It's all interrelated between humans. Because a lot of people, one of these days, I'll have to explain what sin really is. I don't think people actually really have a complete idea of what sin is. But if I do something to you and I hurt you, and then you go and you hurt somebody else, and then they hurt somebody, and this is like a chain reaction. So if I can improve upon me, and if I can help others too, then this can hopefully be a positive thing in the world. So I put a lot of effort into myself, the way that I eat, the water that I drink, the way that I live, the happiness that I seek, the happiness that I choose to share with others, trying to be patient with others, trying to give my time to others, everything that we can do, even Alan having shows like this and bringing good things to people, good things, be better, do better. You do the best you can, even in the midst of all this chaos that is going on. And that will show a lot about what you're made of. Because if you start going out and rioting and you're beating up people and you're just getting drunk and you don't care and you don't love your kids or all these different things, this is actually, believe it or not, showing a part of yourself, not so that everybody can judge you, for you. Because when you do go on to the other side, you are eventually going to reflect on that and be like, oh man, why did I do that? And if you were able to rise above, even in the midst of the chaos, in the most difficult of times, and then you go to the other side and you reflect and you're like, yeah, I did it right. You feel proud of yourself in a certain way, not in an arrogant way, but you're like, you know what? That's what I was made of. This is what I'm made of.
Let's continue along these lines in our next show, really. And
okay, sure.
Barbara, for your dedication.
Oh, no. So thank you, Greg. This has been, again, uplifting. I'm really honored to spend this time with you. I hope somehow you'll get a download for people how they can get the hydrogen in a more accessible way.
Maybe we'll just give it away public. How about that? A little hydrogen.
Like hydrogen stations.
A free hydrogen station.
I was, well, oh, and then I know because this hydrogen, last thing, dissipates over a period of time, they have that bag that you can carry it around like for 24 hours. But it would be really cool because I've already made like 5, like pots of hydrogen, like to have it where you can get more, where it's easier to keep it longer.
Well, they're probably working on that technology.
I'm sure they're working. Yeah.
Well, I can say this. If you fill up the hydrogen pouch with water from the Hydrofix, which is a more stable hydrogen, if you put the bag on its side instead of upright and you put it in the refrigerator, it will hold over 90% of the hydrogen for a week.
Wow, that's good to know.
Wow.
Well, let me just also ask you one more question. You said that they could make it, but it would be more flammable, the hydrogen. But could you actually make a hydrogen machine and be flammable, but get more hydrogen in your body if it was a protected area?
Well, they can actually make a machine that would make more hydrogen that is not flammable still, by the way, but a machine like that would probably be, last time I asked them this question, because I've asked this question before too, it'd probably be in the range of about $11,000. It would not be cheap because as you produce higher amounts of hydrogen, you lose purity. So the device that they have here, they found like the perfect balance between the amount of hydrogen and the purity is so high. Like I said, there's something that I want to share with you guys, but I was asked not to, but you're going to hear more about it in the future. And it's just proving my point. But basically they found this machine, for the price, the water and the gas inhalation, they hit the sweet spot. They really did. And they could do more, but the price would go up a lot. And if you really wanted more hydrogen, all you do is inhale a little longer. So it's almost like, think about it as pills. Let's say you had a bottle of pills and each pill was 1,000 IUs of vitamin D, okay? If you wanted more, you just take more pills. Instead of having one pill that is 10,000 IUs, you could just take 10 of the pills. So you could just breathe in a little longer, you're getting more hydrogen, so you don't really need a machine. Go ahead.
No, thank you for that. And just what do you think of hyperbaric chambers that infuse the body with oxygen? I'm sure you've looked at.
I am aware of them. I think they're great. Look, Oxygen therapy is a good thing, in my opinion. The only problem is oxygen therapy needs to be done very differently and implemented very differently, because the human body, remember this, oxygen is coming from the outside, the world of the dead, outside. Hydrogen is produced on the inside. Your life is within. Okay. And so there is this is where it gets very spiritual between the relationship of oxygen and hydrogen, which ultimately intertwine and is what is water is. And we'll go more into this. Yeah. But oxygen therapy, I don't know if you're aware of this. Let's say I start using oxygen and I'm using it regularly. My body will adapt within 3 days. Within 3 days, it will literally begin to produce less red blood cells, because the body is thinking, believe me, this body has a memory of its own. And the body will be like, oh, we're getting plenty of oxygen. I don't need to produce this many more red blood cells, which we use to absorb oxygen. And that is a problem. So what professionals actually do, if you really want to learn about proper oxygen therapy, professionals will actually mimic high altitude, which means they actually give you less oxygen. You're mimicking high altitude, and the body will produce more red blood cells. I need to get as much oxygen because it's readily available in my environment. And then you do a protocol where you flood it into the body and you have all these red blood cells absorbing all this oxygen, but it goes in waves. You have to learn how to use it.
But there's some contraindications with hyperbaric, with people with cancer, with certain kinds of oxidative stress, like the hyperbaric is not a cure-all. And it right. is not something, there's a lot of, you have to look at a lot of different areas, because I was advised for, I forget why, not to do it.
Right. But it's interesting what you're saying, the relationship between hydrogen and oxygen, that dynamic, of course, water is the universal elixir. So yeah, go ahead and then we'll wrap up.
And maybe I'll let you wrap up with this one, Alan, and we'll get people's appetite whet for the next spiritual conversation. In ancient scripture, according to the scriptures, do you know where the tree of life is located in the garden?
No.
The Garden of Eden. It's in the center of the garden. Okay. Now, then if you look carefully, and it's in there, do you know where the tree of knowledge of good and evil is located in the garden?
Oh, I do not. No.
It is also located in the center of the garden. Why? Because in my opinion, the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life are actually the same tree. And I'll explain real quickly, briefly, so we can get ready for the next conversation. The tree of knowledge of good and evil, let's use different words so that people can understand, because the translations where everybody's getting screwed up. The tree of knowledge of good and evil is actually the tree of life and death, good and evil, light and darkness. It's all the same thing. Okay, so go ahead.
Duality.
So when you look at water, water is made up of hydrogen and oxygen, an oxidant and antioxidant, death and life. Water is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Water is it, but life is the hydrogen. And we know that hydrogen is the life molecule. We see what it does to the blood. We see what it does to plants. It is the sun that brings all the life to the planet, all these things. But water, good and evil, death and life, is actually about balance. Balance is the secret, because think about life on planet Earth. If you get too much water, you drown everything and you kill everything. If you take all the water away, everything dries up and everything dies. It's about balance, and life is about balance. And that duality of light and darkness, we are literally the embodiment of it. We have the flesh and we have the spirit. The spirit is the life. It is what's eternal. The flesh can die, clearly, and it is death. And a lot of times it's what's the word I'm looking? Flesh is the avenue to corruption, because the flesh is needy. The flesh desires so much because of its neediness, and it opens the door. That's why you shouldn't tempt the flesh. I mean, even Jesus said it, lead us not into temptation. And he said also, remember what Jesus said before he went to go get beaten up and crucified? He was literally having a hard time too. And he said, the flesh is weak, but the spirit is willing. I'm trying to tell you here, there's a whole duality that needs to be understood. And if you don't understand this duality, you will never understand the deeper parts of spirituality and even the ancient scriptures and the things that they were trying to teach us.
Are you saying, though, we exist here in duality, and we have to understand it and embrace it in order to really be able to ascend? Is that what you're saying? Or
I'm saying that you need to understand. Once you can understand the duality and understand both sides, and you can begin to find balance, and this will help guide you. Remember that the ancient scriptures also said this, and this is very important because most people don't understand the scriptures. There's an ancient verse that says, you must learn to walk with spirit. Okay. What this means is that you don't want the flesh leading the way. The flesh doesn't know anything. The flesh is a little kid. It doesn't really know much. It doesn't have a lot of wisdom. When it says we must learn to walk with spirit, means that the spirit, you need to learn to let it guide your life, guide your flesh, and then your flesh has to follow. Just like a child that follows an adult that hopefully has wisdom and begins to teach them the ways of wisdom. Please go ahead.
I have one good idea. You could get like 4 people, they split the machine, they get the hydrogen back. You say it lasts for 24 hours.
Yeah.
And then,
but let's continue. Maybe next week, maybe next Thursday or Friday, I'll let you know. Someone wanted to know about the hydroxyl ions. We'll talk about that next time, hydroxyl ions. Do you know about that? Yes.
You're probably talking about hydroxyl radicals, but okay.
Right. We'll talk about that too. And we'll go deeper into, and you should come on the show. You're so good.
I want to come on.
Or wherever you are.
Yeah, okay.
No, we'll do it earlier in the day. All right. We'll be in touch. Greg,
God bless you. And you might be that prophet. You're very inspiring to me. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
You do. You're vital. You're clear. You're on point. So you're doing something right.
I'm on a mission. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Greg.
Thank you guys so much. I really enjoyed talking with you guys, and I appreciate your great questions, and I hope that the audience really enjoyed it. You were fantastic, by the way, and you can have my personal phone number. You can contact me anytime you need anything, okay?
Do that. Thanks so much. Thank you, Barbara, for co-hosting.
I'm going to contact you anyway about something.
All right. Thanks, Greg. Talk